It's finally here. It's finally time for War Machine. Welcome in, folks. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming. And look, we've been talking about this card since beta, but in a variety of different ways. War Machine is finally coming to Marvel Snap. I don't think the community could be more excited about this card. I haven't seen hype around a card like this in months, and I think there's probably really good reason for it. So if you like this type of pre-card breakdown, as always, hit that like and subscribe button down below as we go talk all of the mechanics of what's going to be really important about War Machine. Let's go swing on over and see what he's going to be bringing to the party. War Machine is a 4/6, pretty good vanilla stat line. On reveal, until the end of next turn, nothing can stop you from playing cards anywhere. There are a couple of caveats to that. I know it sounds like nothing can stop you, but the big word in here I must re-articulate is playing. This is going to open up you taking cards from your hand and playing them into places that you could not prior. This is essentially turning your entire hand into Jeff the Baby Landshark's first part of his ability. So let's make that very, very clear. Why? Because you cannot move cards. This is not going to allow you to move cards left and right in and out of, let's say, Space Throne or Professor X lanes, because War Machine has opened up your ability to open the lanes. This doesn't give you the Snow Guard Hawk style effect where now you can move cards in and out of a location that was closed. This is essentially doing just the first part of Jeff's ability, which is allowing you taking from your hand and put it into that spot that could not be accessed before. Whether it's a stormed location, whether maybe it's a location like Crimson Cosmos, maybe it's a location like the Big House, or you get the idea of what we're talking about here, right? I think that's really important to understand, because this doesn't change the mechanics of what's happening within the location. This changes the mechanics of you being able to access it to play it. So this does mean, for example, if we take a look at something like Cannonball or Shang-Chi, if you've got a big card on the other side of your battlefield under a Professor X, you can't open up that Professor X lane and Shang-Chi to destroy the card or convert it into a rock via Cannonball in that lane. That's not what War Machine is going to do. He's just accessing the ability to play down cards into the lane. So if you put, for example, Spider-Man into a Professor X lane, normally, obviously, Professor X reveals, and if Spider-Man is revealed on the other side afterwards, it wouldn't swing out. If you reopen Professor X and play Spider-Man, Spider-Man's not going to swing out. Let's get that very clear, too. This does bypass your cards restrictions, not just the location restrictions. So, we're all talking about Ebony Maw and Infinite, because it's been confirmed. The team answers from Glenn has said directly that you'll be able to play Ebony Maw on that turn without having to worry about his condition. Or same thing for Infinite, where you could play, imagine the line of Hope Summers on 3, then on 4, you drop War Machine. Now with that extra energy, you can drop your 6/20 Infinite. That synergy will be very prominent because it's the most popular prominence of what War Machine is probably going to do. So including the decks that we're about to showcase, you're going to see that play line. Be ready for that. Other restrictions, though, you got to think of cards like Giganto, who's typically only available for the left-hand side. Cull Obsidian, only restricted to 1-cost card lanes. Crossbones, you must be winning that lane. Not anymore. Sentry, you can't play into right. Technically, now you actually can. These are all cards that are important to think about because they're all big, beefy cards. And War Machine allows you to put those big, beefy cards down into places that you couldn't necessarily, or at times that you couldn't necessarily do it beforehand. So this is going to bypass other card mechanics that are ongoing. For example, Electro and Sandman, just like how Jeff can avoid it, now on that turn, you'll be able to avoid it as well. But the big one that I think everybody is sleeping on about being a huge synergy is not Sandman or Electro. I actually think it's Goose. Goose is going to be a huge one because you'll be able to play your 5 or 6 cost cards into that Goose lane, but your opponent can't. So we're going to talk more about Goose in a little bit, though. Other location restrictions, though, that this does generally open up. So similar to Goose, you're going to see like the Big House and Crimson Cosmos. Of course, people think about Space Throne. This doesn't turn off the abilities after the turn, though. So in Deep Space, you may not have necessarily wanted to play a card there before, you could play that Devil Dino in there, but Devil Dino is going to lose that ability once the War Machine ability is worn off. So just be careful with a couple of those things, because it's going to be very prominent to play into your Storm lanes and your Goose lanes and your Professor X lanes. But in regards to what those cards do in the lanes, remember, War Machine is about access to the location, not changing the function of that location. It's Dex time, and as seems to be a consistent trend on this channel, I thought it was fun to kind of dive into Hela. Yes, I know, but hear me out. I'm doing it a little different this time because I really liked the super giant Hela build that we had built in the past. And what this is going to open up is a very unique combination where instead of just having your MODOK Hela playlines, you're actually going to build a second playline into it with what would have been Shuri Red Skull. Everybody sees Shuri go into Red Skull, and then Red Skull goes into Taskmaster. You could do it with Vision, you could do it with a couple other cards. Now, because of Hope Summers allowing ramp, and now War Machine allowing a couple of restrictors to be dropped, like from Giganto and Infinite, we could see play lines like Hope Summers into War Machine, into Giganto, into Taskmaster, or into Infinite into Taskmaster. Or you could just go for the whole straight play line of putting Supergiant onto Hope Summers' lane, followed by Hela, lastly MODOK. It's giving you two different big power win conditions without one being predicated on the other. And because the deck is going to run no 1-cost cards and no 2-cost cards, by turn 3, that means you've pulled half of your deck. You know right away, are you going Hope Summers into one of the 4 costs into something else? Are you going Electro into MODOK to ramp it early because you haven't drawn Hela yet? You see what I'm saying here? There's a couple of different ways that you could run to Hela with Red Skull. I thought the name was kind of fun. But what about the rocks? What about something that allows you to play with those other locations? So War Machine being able to open up access to your Professor X lanes and to your Storm lanes is how I wanted to spin a lot of these decks. And I ended up finding myself in something very particular, which is Professor X doesn't synergize as often as you think with War Machine, just because of how the costs go. War Machine is a defensive mechanic against Professor X, unless if you're using Professor X to your offensive benefit. So we took the advantages of what we learned from hybriding together the Junk and Patriot deck, and now I'm applying it with Cannonball Infinite and Ebony Maw. I like this combination in particular because we can really capitalize on these rocks. We can say the squirrels are coming out here to get the Cull Obsidian down in several different locations. I've got 0 to be able to go into Ebony Maw if we need to, or to disable the Cull Obsidian. Now, I've tried, I thought about regularly, because I know you're going to see squirrels, you're going to see debris, you're going to see where's Mockingbird. Mockingbird could go in place of Cannonball, but I want to try Cannonball in this because I've seen the successes that can happen from Cannonball in Professor X games without needing to run Goliath. I do have to give credit where credit is due. So let's play a Daredevil combination in here so we know exactly what we're looking to do. If you're putting down Daredevil on 2, War Machine on 4, you now have a lot of accessibility to where you need to play what if you've stormed previously. Or do you need to put down that Cull in a different lane than you may have done originally? Are you going to hit out a card with Cannonball? There's a lot of fun that can be had here. So I really like what this deck is going to open up. Infinite is going to make an appearance here because we could go War Machine on 5, potentially into the Infinite as just the big giant turn 6 play to swing back a lane that was probably being lost beforehand. This is a work in progress, but I really think that there's something here when it comes to the Whirlwind Machine. As for this hunk of junk, I mean, it's exactly titled as it should be. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new here. This is exactly what you expect it to be. It is a junk deck, it has a Darkhawk package, and it synergizes incredibly well with the Zabu package of maybe having War Machine be valuable. I like this deck in particular because I wanted to find a way to make Sentry work with that War Machine capability, and having a Zabu deck build does allow us to do that. So you could actually War Machine on 3 into Sentrying on the right lane, and let the Sentry and the Void coexist in the right lane, later on than annihilating it over on turn 5 or turn 6. And you've already got your 10 power, so you don't need to give extra further swing into that lane if you really don't feel like you need to. Even if that lane gets Shang-Chi'd, you've sent over a negative 10 power Void. And then by synergizing that with the Rock Slide, Korg, and Darkhawk package, turn-wise, it works out really well because you can accelerate through what would have been your Sentry package because you're already playing down potentially Hood and Rock Slide on 1 and 3, or you could have had that Zabu line that allowed you to go Zabu War Machine, get Sentry down on 4, or Cull Obsidian into a different lane than you may have wanted to put it originally. I really like Cull Obsidian a lot with War Machine. More and more I keep looking for decks. So this is nothing new. This is a Darkhawk junk deck, and I just think it works. But generally thinking about what War Machine is actually doing, I kept coming back to, okay, organically, it's a turn 4 card into turn 5. So Daredevil gives you control of turn 5, and you think about Daredevil, you think about Professor X. So I wanted to try to build something that allowed us that strength of trying to figure out what is Professor X really going to do beneficially here, but how can War Machine also be our friend? So we lean into the Zabu line a little bit differently again, and now we're pushing for priority. I've got Nebula in this deck, I've got Gladiator in this deck, because I'm also putting back in Supergiant. So we have a flex potential option by using that Alioth to clear the Supergiant placed cards potentially. And then we're also putting Serra in here. So it's kind of Serra Tech, kind of that Cryo Supergiant Alioth build. It's hybriding right in between the two, where you're looking to control your enemy like Serra Tech typically wants to do, but also gives you those secondary flexible play lines of saying, what does War Machine bring to the party in actuality here? What are we going to want to do with this type of deck? Well, we're going to access it as a defensive card. It's here as a secondary play line. I'm not looking to use War Machine all the time as my win condition, so where does it fit where it plays into being a defensive card? War Machine here does that for us. So that's why I wanted to spin something into turn 5 alive. As we mentioned that a lot of the restrictors that exist in the game, you look at Electro, you look at Sandman, but also Ebony Maw and Goose, you see the consistency about them being ongoing effects. So I took the on reveal of War Machine and I'm implementing it into that. I want to see what it does in a ongoing lockdown deck. So we're putting Storm, Jessica Jones, which are great combinations to begin with, and Omega Red actually feels good here because if you put Omega Red, let's say, into that Storm lane on turn 4 and you're losing it, you don't have to exclusively rely on Jeff the Baby Landshark. This one is generally a little bit more lower series, lower collection level friendly. Miss Marvel can also be replaced out with somebody else if you absolutely want to or need to, because look at everything else in here. Most of these cards are going to be Series 1 or very early Series 2 that you can collect. A couple of asterisks, but not too many. And I liked the notion of having War Machine be something that later I can revisit by playing it on turn 4 to give me another chance at that bonus on the Stormed lane. Because maybe you stormed the left-hand side and you really want your Claw bonus to be in the mid. Or you put Goose down in the mid and you want to put that Claw into the mid. Or you want to go back into it later with Omega Red and drop down a Jessica Jones instead on turn 5 to let it organically do what it wants to do as a 4/9. So this gives that flexibility of reopening Goose and allows you to play a 1/7 on the same turn. So if you don't have Zabu down and you play down War Machine on 4, you could still drop Ebony Maw plus another 4-drop on turn 5 because it's just that much power. I think Ongoing has a big potential here. So I wanted to lean first into a deck that's very, very similar to what we saw be very successful with Ms. Marvel when she first premiered in the game, and I just kind of updated it for War Machine. But if Ongoing today doesn't seem like what your cup of tea should have been to drink, maybe we just go into it completely differently. Let's spin Ongoing on its head, and let's put in Pixie, because the good thing about some of these Ongoings, like Ant-Man and Ebony Maw, they are 1 cost. They are cheap. Goose is a 2 cost. Goose is cheap. Onslaught never feels good unless if it's really specifically doubling up something like Claw. So why not maybe play around with that idea and put it into a Pixie deck? Because Pixie decks thrive on Mobius M. Mobius, who is a very relevant card right now because of Mockingbird, obviously. So let's lean into that side of it and put the ongoing Spectrum Onslaught combination together. So you have the flexibility of, okay, if I don't need my Howard the Duck to be a 1-cost, but if I can put that 1-cost somewhere else, that feels really good. Especially if you put Pixie and Mobius together and you have those two in your hand by turn 2, that should be a snap condition almost automatically. But then with War Machine reopening up as we did in the past with that previous deck of Goose and Ebony Maw, this is offering a different alternate play line because now you have reduced those costs via Pixie. I think this is just going to be a little bit more of a fun mini version of an ongoing deck, but why not? I had to save the best for last, though. I almost named this the Ken Special because, as many of you know, Super Tech God loves the Infinite. So let's lean into the Infinite as much as possible here. So we built a Black Knight deck in honor of him. This is War Knight. So you've got major play lines being able to be manipulated here. You've got the classic Black Knight combinations with Infinite and Lady Sif and Ghost Rider, being able to bring those cards back and forth, Blade to discard as well. But now you have a second way to do some awesome crazy power because War Machine's going to be opening up Ebony Maw Giganto and the Infinite to be able to be played as you essentially wish, because Giganto being able to be played on turn 5 in the right-hand lane, that's a big, big deal. So I wanted to run with that and have some fun with it. So we're going to do that. You have the option of getting either Magneto, Giganto, or Infinite as big discards, all 6-cost cards, for the Black Knight / Ebony Blade to evolve into. And a 412, 414, 420, I mean, those are absolutely stellar numbers. Put Zabu into this deck. So now you've got Hope Summers and Zabu. You've got extra energy. You've got reducing energy. You've got cards being able to come on back. You could play both Ghost Rider and Shang-Chi potentially on the final turn of the game. In my opinion, this is the deck to open with War Machine because it does a little bit of everything. It gets big, beefy cards out on the battlefield that cannot be destroyed. You have movement elements in here. You have control elements in here. You have revive and destroy and discard. You have so much chaos all going on in one deck that this deck, I would not be surprised to see do well high in Infinite at the top of the ladder because you have full control and a variety of different outs depending on your draws. It's not exclusive to the Black Knight line. You can play this entire discard series as you essentially wish, and then War Machine just brings it over the top because it takes off some of those restrictors that we had with the Black Knight deck, which is I couldn't play my Infinite if I wanted to without having to skip. Now, between Hope Summers and Infinite and War Machine together, we have a very dangerous combination ahead. Now, I want to put a caveat here as well because War Machine is an incredibly fun and flexible card. I do think that he is absolutely worth 6,000 collector tokens. I do think that he is going to be worth using your spotlight keys for to have in your collection. However, I'm going to go out on a major limb here and tell you that he is going to be a seasonal card. He is going to be a card like Luke Cage, in my opinion, where every now and then we see a lot of Affliction decks come to be popular, and then more people start running Luke Cage again, and now that Luke Cage is an AoE style effect, that really encompasses when you want to use him and when you don't want to use him. I think the exact same thing is going to happen here with War Machine. War Machine is going to be here to help mitigate the lockdownness of certain moments, whether it be a new location that comes out or a new deck that gets popular. As restrictors come to be from your side of the battlefield, War Machine is going to be a card that you want to have in your collection to use at those moments of this is what the meta is showing you. You need to be prepared for it. Now, going into the first week of War Machine, you're going to see War Machine decks everywhere, and the value of Professor X is going to drop down tremendously, even in the decks that I'm offering with him. And I know this, but I want to make this incredibly clear that he is a good card and will be a good card for a short period of time. Then it'll fall off, then it'll come back, then it'll fall off, etc., etc. It is going to be a cyclical card in my own personal opinion because people will be ready to counter it. We've seen this happen with Luke Cage. We've seen this happen with Mobius. any major ongoing that helps to mitigate certain cards. Like even Shadow King was in that cycle, if you will, for a little while of this is needed, now it's not, this is needed, now it's not. This is going to be a card that for the short term will be needed, but don't worry if you don't get it, because there will come a time where it is not needed. In the short term, you're going to love having this card. Long term, I would try to aim for it if you can't get it on the first go around, because it's just a great tech card to have in your deck at all times. It is valuable for your collection. There are some amazing variants coming out for this one as well, because it's been in beta data mines for over a year in a variety of different forms and shapes. So there's already a good collection of cards and variants that will come out for it. This is an exciting card, and you should be excited for it too. I am. We're going to be testing this card for all of the hours next week on stream. I cannot wait to have you join me and be a part of that live on Twitch, as we do every single week when the new cards drop. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, like, subscribe. Have a great rest of your day.